He didn't have electricity. He didn't have a furnace. He didn't even have running water. But on the coldest night of the year, the kind of night that kills engines, cracks pipes, and turns exposed skin black in under 4 minutes, he was sitting inside his hidden shelter, sleeves rolled up, eating a warm meal. Outside, negative 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, 72. That is not an exaggeration. That is not a campfire story. That is a documented, repeatable, buildable thermal gap of 119 degrees between what nature throws at you and what you feel inside your walls. And the man who built it, he didn't use any magic material. He didn't spend $100,000. He used a method that Alaskan wilderness survivors figured out decades ago, a method that combines military engineering, ancient earth science, and pure geometric brilliance into one structure most people have never even heard of. It is called the Alaskan Quonset hideout. He didn't have electricity. He didn't have a furnace. He didn't even have running water. But on the coldest night of the year, the kind of night that kills engines, cracks pipes, and turns exposed skin black in under 4 minutes, he was sitting inside his hidden shelter, sleeves rolled up, eating a warm meal. Outside, negative 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, 72. That is not an exaggeration. That is not a campfire story. That is a documented, repeatable, buildable thermal gap of 119 degrees between what nature throws at you and what you feel inside your walls. And the man who built it, he didn't use any magic material. He didn't spend $100,000. He used a method that Alaskan wilderness survivors figured out decades ago, a method that combines military engineering, ancient earth science, and pure geometric brilliance into one structure most people have never even heard of. It is called the Alaskan Quonset hideout. And by the time this video ends, you will understand exactly why it outperforms every cabin, every bunker, and every shelter ever built for cold weather survival, and precisely how you can build one yourself. Stay with me, because what you are about to learn will permanently change the way you think about shelter, warmth, and what it really means to be prepared. Most people think warmth is about what you burn: more firewood, bigger stove, better coat. They are thinking about the problem completely backwards. The Alaskans who survived the worst winters in North American history were not the ones who burned the most fuel. They were the ones who designed their shelters to need the least. That distinction, burning less versus needing less, is the entire philosophy behind what you are about to see. Let's go back to 1941. The United States Navy is facing a massive problem. They need to shelter tens of thousands of soldiers in locations across the Pacific and the Arctic, locations where traditional construction is impossible. No lumber mills nearby, no concrete plants, no time. They need a shelter that can be shipped anywhere in the world as flat steel panels, assembled by 2 men with basic tools in a single afternoon, and survive hurricane winds without bolts shearing or walls collapsing. A team of engineers at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, solved the problem with a design so elegant it almost looks like a mistake. A simple half-cylinder, corrugated steel curve from one edge of the ground, arching up and over, back down to the other side. No corners. No vertical walls fighting the wind, just one continuous curve that deflects force in every direction simultaneously. They call it the Quonset hut. Within 3 years, over 150,000 of them are deployed across every major theater of the war. The design survives monsoons, blizzards, mortar blasts, and decades of neglect. When the war ends, surplus units flood civilian markets for almost nothing. That is when the Alaskans get their hands on them. And that is when something extraordinary begins. The bush homesteaders of interior Alaska, men who had spent their entire lives learning how to stay alive in conditions that would kill most people in 48 hours, look at this military structure and immediately see its potential. But they also see its limitations. A bare steel arch, even with basic insulation, is not enough for an Alaskan winter. You need something more. Something that uses the land itself as a weapon against the cold. So they start experimenting, burying the structures, packing earth against the walls, digging down into hillsides, combining the arch with techniques borrowed from ancient Norse longhouses, native Alaskan sod construction, and their own hard-won understanding of how heat actually behaves in extreme cold. What they develop over years of trial and error is not just a modified military shelter. It is a completely new category of structure, and its thermal performance, that 65-degree plus advantage over conventional cabins in identical conditions, comes from 5 distinct physical principles working together simultaneously. Understanding these 5 principles is not just interesting, it is the difference between a shelter that survives winter and one that defeats it. The first principle is convection geometry. In any square or rectangular room, heat rises straight up, hits the flat ceiling, spreads to the corners, and gets trapped. Cold air pools at floor level. You end up with your head at 75 degrees and your feet at 55. You burn fuel constantly fighting that stratification. The arch eliminates this entirely. In a curved interior, rising warm air follows the curve of the wall and cycles back down in a smooth loop. Floor-to-ceiling temperature differential in a well-built Quonset arch is often less than 4 degrees. You heat the space once and it stays even. That single factor alone reduces fuel consumption by 30% compared to a rectangle of identical volume. The second principle is earth-tempered insulation. This is the deepest secret of the Alaskan method. At 4 feet below the surface, even in the interior of Alaska, ground temperature stays between 40 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit every single day of the year, even when air temperature is -50. The Earth at depth is thermally stable because it absorbs solar energy across an entire summer and releases it slowly across winter. When you dig your Quonset structure 2 to 4 feet into the ground and berm excavated soil up against its sides, you replace the most thermally vulnerable part of your exterior, the lower walls, with material that never drops below 40 degrees. You are not fighting the Arctic. You are using it. That principle alone accounts for 20 to 30 degrees of temperature difference between a Quonset hideout and a surface cabin on the same night. The third principle is snow as a passive insulation layer. Here is something most people never consider. Snow is not just frozen water. It is a matrix of ice crystals with enormous amounts of trapped air between them. An igloo, a structure made entirely of snow, can maintain interior temperatures near 32 degrees Fahrenheit when outside air is -40. The snow wall is doing all the work. A properly sited Quonset arch accumulates deep snow on its lower sides and bermed earthen flanks throughout winter. That snowpack adds an additional R-value layer that costs nothing, installs itself automatically, and grows thicker as the season gets harder. The structure gets more insulated the colder the winter becomes. That is not coincidence. That is design. The fourth principle is surface area geometry. This is pure mathematics, and it matters enormously. A half-cylinder has significantly less exterior surface area per cubic foot of interior space than any rectangular building of equivalent volume. Surface area is where heat escapes. Every square foot of exterior wall is a thermal leak. The arch shape minimizes that leak surface while maximizing interior volume. A 16-foot wide, 30-foot-long Quonset has roughly 40% less heat loss surface area than a rectangular cabin of the same floor plan. That 40% reduction in thermal exposure means 40% less energy required to maintain interior temperature. In a survival context, that is the difference between a cordwood lasting a week and lasting a month. The fifth principle is thermal mass storage. The Alaskan builders who understood this principle added stone, concrete block, or packed earth inside their Quonset structures, particularly surrounding the stove. Dense materials absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. A fire burns hot for 3 hours in the morning, charging the thermal mass. That mass then radiates steady, gentle heat for the next 12 hours while fire dies down. You are not heating air. You are charging a battery. Combined with the other 4 principles, thermal mass turns a Quonset hideout into something closer to a living organism than a building, a structure that breathes, stores, and distributes warmth with extraordinary efficiency. Now you know why it works. Let us talk about how to build it. Site selection is where everything starts, and where most amateur builders make fatal mistakes. The old Alaskan homesteaders spent days, sometimes weeks, finding the right location before they ever touched a shovel. They were looking for 5 specific conditions. A south-facing slope, so winter sun strikes the end wall at maximum angle through the short daylight hours. Dense evergreen tree cover set back 30 to 50 feet, providing a windbreak without shading the structure. A natural hillside or embankment into which the rear of the structure can be tucked for earth sheltering. proximity to a reliable water source, stream, spring, or snowmelt, with enough elevation above it to avoid flood risk, and natural visual concealment, because a Quonset painted in earth tones, half buried in a hillside, surrounded by trees, is genuinely invisible from 200 yards. In Alaska, being found when you do not want to be found can be as dangerous as a cold. Once the site is confirmed, excavation begins. A tight Quonset is a nearly airtight Quonset, and airtight spaces accumulate carbon dioxide and moisture. The solution is simple. A 4-inch passive air intake tube runs through the lower wall near floor level, drawing fresh cold air in at ground level where it warms before rising. Stale air exits through the chimney draft or a small ceiling vent. No mechanical fan required. Gravity and thermodynamics do the work. Once the structure is sealed and the stove is installed, the berming begins. All that excavated soil comes back, packed firmly against the exterior arches to a depth of 3 to 4 feet on the sides and rear. Sod strips go on top, cut from native ground nearby, laid carefully, watered if the season allows it. Native grasses, low shrubs, moss, and ground cover are transplanted around the base. Within one growing season, the structure is indistinguishable from the hillside around it, from the air, from the trail, from any direction, but directly head-on to the south-facing entry. It does not exist. The interior of a finished Alaskan Quonset hideout is organized with the same efficiency as the structure itself. The center of the arch, the highest, warmest, most spacious zone, becomes a living and sleeping area. A platform bed elevated 12 inches off the floor stays above any residual cold layer. Wool blankets, synthetic insulation, or animal hides provide redundant thermal protection during sleep. A small table, oil lamp, or 12-volt LED lighting on a battery charged by a small solar panel on the south-facing end wall, and a folding chair complete the space. The stove zone occupies one end of the structure near the chimney penetration. Cast iron cookware hangs within reach. A propane canister backup burner handles quick heating when the main stove is cold. Stone or brick surrounds the stove base, storing heat and protecting the floor. The opposite end, the rear earth contact zone, stays the coolest. Temperatures there run naturally between 35 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit throughout winter. This makes it a refrigerator without electricity. Root vegetables, carrots, turnips, potatoes, beets, stored in sand-filled crates last 4 to 5 months without spoiling. Canned goods, dried legumes, rice, oats, and hard cheeses in sealed 5-gallon buckets fill the shelves. A basic gravity-fed water tank, filled by snowmelt or stream water run through a ceramic filter, provides clean water without pumps or pressure systems. Tools and gear hang on timber pegs and pegboard along one interior wall. Axe, bow saw, folding shovel, snowshoes, ice fishing gear, first aid kit, fire starters, rope, and whatever else the builder's situation demands. Nothing sits on the floor. Everything is accessible, organized, and dry. A man who builds this correctly can walk into it in November and not walk out until April, fed, warm, rested, and functional. This is not a primitive shelter. This is a precision thermal system built from basic materials by people who understood that survival in extreme cold is not a matter of toughness. It is a matter of intelligence applied to physics. And here's why this matters right now. Today, in a world where energy costs are accelerating, grid reliability is declining, and the interest in genuine self-sufficiency has never been higher. The Quonset hideout with earth sheltering and a rocket mass heater can reduce heating energy consumption by 70 to 80% compared to a code-built residential structure of equivalent floor area. In dollar terms, across a single heating season in a cold climate, that gap can exceed several $1,000s. Across a decade, it is a profound financial advantage. Modern builders are combining the traditional Alaskan technique with contemporary upgrades that the homesteaders could not have imagined. Closed-cell spray foam instead of bad insulation. Phase-change thermal mass materials that store 10 times more heat per pound than concrete. Small photovoltaic panels on the south end wall, charging lithium battery banks for lighting, communication, and water pumping. Composting toilets eliminating the need for septic systems in remote locations. Passive solar greenhouses attached to the south end wall, extending the growing season by 60 to 90 days in northern climates. The result is not a rustic survival hut. It is a fully functional, off-grid home, warm, quiet, self-sufficient, and nearly invisible, that two men with basic skills can build in under 2 weeks. That is the Alaskan Quonset way. Not a trend, not a gimmick, not a social media aesthetic. A system of physical principles refined over decades of unforgiving conditions by men who understood that the cold does not care about your intentions, only your preparation. 65 degrees warmer, a fraction of the firewood, hidden in plain sight, buildable by ordinary people with ordinary tools. The knowledge has always existed. Most people just never thought to look for it. Now you have it. But before you close this video, let's talk about what happens to the men who actually build this, because their stories are the real evidence. There's a reason this method has never gone viral before. The people who use it do not want to be found. They are not posting on social media. They are not selling courses or running YouTube channels. They are living in structures precisely engineered for invisibility, in locations specifically chosen for remoteness, heating their homes with few sticks of wood, while everyone around them burns through budgets and fuel reserves trying to maintain comfort inside buildings designed by architects who have never spent a night below zero. One builder in the Alaskan interior ran his structure through an entire winter with a single cord of birch wood. One cord that is a stack 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, and 8 feet long. A conventional log cabin of similar square footage in the same region would consume 8 to 12 cords in the same period. He kept a thermometer mounted on a post 50 feet from his door, and a second one on his interior wall. The average differential across that winter was 61 degrees Fahrenheit. On the coldest recorded night, negative 53 at the exterior post, his interior wall thermometer read 68. That is a gap of 65 degrees warmer. Built by 2 men, hidden from the world, heated by almost nothing. That is the Alaskan Quonset way. Now you have it. The question is what you do next.